Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. We're here. We're back at it again, and we're going to get on into it. But before we do, as always, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. You know, I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. With that being said, here's a quick word from our sponsors. Organic herbs and botanicals, skincare and edibles, wellness for body and mind. The Brothers Apothecary. Fine teas and remedies. Ronald Records. From indie gems to classic hits, discover the heart of local music. With live shows all the time, up close and personal, and regular releases on their in-house label. Ronald Records. Supporting the community, one track at a time. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Again, shout out The Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Here is today's guest.
Hello, I'm Steven Golliday. Glad to be here.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. It's an honor.
Yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Give us that Tinder profile of your involvement with music.
All right. Can do that. Yeah, I'm Steven Golliday. I am based here in Portland. I've been here for about going on 4 years.
Okay, where were you at before?
I lived in New York for about a dozen years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I lived there, and I'm originally from the Los Angeles area, Long Beach.
Okay,
That's
so
where I grew up.
Literally just one end to the other.
Yeah, doing it, and moved back. My wife grew up here, and we've always visited. I've always really dug Portland, and we just both wanted to be back on the West Coast and decided to come out, and among all the COVID commotion and all that. And so, yeah, it's a good place to be. Really glad to be here. Creatively, it's super rich.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a really good move.
Oh, yeah. And what got you started in music initially?
Wow. That is a good question. Well, going back to when I was a kid, I played violin for a hot second.
Yeah. That was technically one of my first
instruments. Yeah, it was funny. We had a school assembly when I was in the 4th grade or so, and this woman came and played the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song.
Whoa!
On the violin, and I was like, that's my instrument. And so that lasted for a year.
Yeah.
And then I would say the next biggest thing at the time was my stepdad got super into Afro-Latin percussion.
Mm-hmm.
So we had congas and djembes and stuff like that around the house. And my brother and I got into playing those just for fun.
Yeah. I mean, when they're around.
Yeah, it was there. So that was a really big influence. I didn't really realize how big of an influence it was at the time, but I think it's still part of my sort of musical makeup. And then I would say when I got to middle school, high school, I was just super into hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
So, being from the West Coast, and I was super into the Bay Area, freestyle scene and all that. So, I was trying to rap and whatnot, and started DJing. And then I came to the bass, the electric bass, when I was maybe about 17 or so kind of late.
Yeah, actually, you started a year after me, so I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. And then I just fell in love with that. And that got me on the journey of really trying to learn, kind of traditional instruments. I had dabbled prior to that in some electronic production and keyboard, early, MIDI stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I that's kind of how I got started.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you said your stepdad was into it. Did you have anybody else in your like household or your like nearby family that was also a musician?
Yeah. So my family has kind of like a legacy of music. Like my great grandparents, my great grandfather was a musician back in New Orleans, had like a sort of traditional kind of jazz band, and I think played clarinet, and my grandmother's brother played saxophone, and one of my uncles played like flute and clarinet and was super into jazz and stuff. So that was a really big influence. No one was professional, and no one like sat me down and schooled me or anything, but music was just like a huge part. My mom sang just around.
Yeah.
Has like a beautiful voice for just like an amateur singer, and so music was huge.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Now, before we get into more of what you're doing with music in the present day, I do have a couple foundation questions I check in with everybody on.
Okay.
This first one, it's one we ask early, it's one we ask often, and it's definitely a crowd favorite. What was the first album you ever bought with your own money?
I think the first album I bought with my own, and I'm going to put own money in air quotes, was I think The Far Side, Lap Cabin, California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think I might have got it on tape.
I
think I probably got it on tape. Yeah.
Okay. That's definitely a quality first choice. And then what was one of the first live shows you ever went to that was like specifically one you wanted to go to?
That I wanted to go to? The earliest one that comes to mind, and this is probably just because it was when I like turned maybe 18 or so, was there was a place in LA called I think it was the Troubadour, and I saw it was a hip hop show, and it was like the Visionaries, Crondon, Zion I. It was like some like just a real like really dope hip hop show, and and I went with a friend of mine, my friend Sean. Shout out DJ Sean Dub. And then that got me hooked on like going to shows and stuff.
Oh, I could imagine. I bet that was wild.
Yeah, it was really dope.
Oh yeah. All right, and then before we officially get into it, do you have a defining moment where you decided you wanted to take music more seriously?
That's a good question. Yes, I would say, so my background is in visual art, and film. I'm a film editor.
Oh, gotcha.
And, I had made, I was probably in my mid 20s or something, maybe 26 or 27. And I made a like student film. I had lived abroad in Panama for a while, and I made a film there. And when it came time to do like a score for it, I was like, all right, let me try my hand at it, not really thinking too much about it. And I did it, and a few people were just like really encouraging, like, yo, you should. And I was recording music, I was making stuff for years, but then it really, some folks were like, you should just put an album together, do something. And so I took it to heart, and I was like, all right, let me start, working on a concentrated collection of songs and stuff. And I was actually living here in Portland briefly for a brief period. And so while I was here, over about the course of a year, I made two projects, that weren't like released commercially or anything, but it was great. And like I had something, as a starting point, and that really, and I was recording everything. I was, mixing it to the extent that it was mixed. And and that got me really taking it seriously from like from a recording standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Now let's go ahead and let's get on into you in the present day.
Sure.
But we're going to get a super easy one out of the way. At least I feel like it's a super easy one.
Okay.
How'd you pick the name?
My name?
Yeah.
It's my birth name.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. See, I had a feeling, but you would be surprised how many times I've asked that, thinking 100% for sure that was the answer.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't.
Yeah.
So.
No, yeah, that's my name. Mom's gave it to me. Yeah, Golliday is my dad's last name, and it's kind of a funny one because it kind of sounds like it could be a made up name.
It's either like one of those like perfectly made up names, or just like a good regular name.
Yeah. And yeah, I've debated when I was getting to make my most recent releases, debating what to what kind of moniker, like how do I want to represent myself? And it just felt like the truest thing I could do is just to use my name.
No, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I've talked to so many people now. So like there's such an interesting line between the decision to go either like regular name or like a different name. And like I said, periodically I get people who like use what sounds like regular names and it's not theirs at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think part of it for me, like I could never use my last name. It's such a goofy, not because I'm like, oh, you can't hear it, but like it's just such a goofy name. Like it's not it's not appealing. So but I think it's a cool one. So
thank you.
But now let's go ahead and let's talk about your writing process. And we're going to break it up into chunks, but we're going to start right at the beginning.
Sure.
So when you get inspired, you're ready to make music. What are some of the things you do to get a track started?
Good question. It tends to start, honestly, I would say the largest percentage of ideas that eventually become songs start with practicing, start with me just like picking up the bass and like playing some, exercise or some groove or something like that, or just improvising. And then if it strikes me as something that could be cool, I usually just record it, sometimes on my phone, sometimes I'll open up the DAW and bring it in. And then sometimes it'll just sit, and sometimes I'll sit at the keyboard and like some chords start sounding good to me and I'll just, keep that as an idea. And then typically the way it's worked is that I'll work on a groove first, like get the groove going, get the harmony going. I think of all the things that I love the most about making music is working out the harmonic structure and chord changes and all that. And then melody usually comes after that. And, I never thought of myself as like, I never was aspiring to be like a singer.
Yeah.
But it just kind of happened.
It works out. Yeah.
And so typically then, I'll have like a instrumental melody that I then try to adapt to a vocal melody that I can actually sing.
Gotcha. Okay.
And sometimes that takes a bit of back and forth because typically, like a lot of times the melodic lines I'll write will be like sometimes really long phrases or things that might, span an octave or something that might be hard to like do with at least my voice. And so yeah, that becomes then like an interesting kind of back and forth development process.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And are you like formally trained? Like have you like taken like classes and things to like learn those rules, or just have you adopted like music structure over time?
Yeah. So my musical training, it's been kind of ad hoc, I would say. Early on when I was getting into playing bass, I took some lessons. I went to a junior college for a few years, and they had a music program where there was a great guitar teacher I had, and we just started playing, and we would, work out some basic, like very basic harmonic theory and rhythm and stuff like that. And I was doing like, introductory sort of, clapping rhythms and learning how to read music in that way and stuff. I wasn't a total beginner at that point, but that's when I was really starting to get into it. And then, I would say like I was getting started in music like very early internet days. So it wasn't like it is now where you can go online and like there's amazing tutorials and different things like that. But I had a lot of books, and I had books that people gave me on, everything from, a lot of it at first was sort of bass oriented. So like learning arpeggios and theory and stuff like that. And then I got super into jazz, as a fan, as a listener, and, started trying to work things out. It wasn't something that I ever thought I could really play, but once I got into it, I was just hooked. And so buying, theory books, buying fake books and stuff like that, and learning tunes. And I would say through that, like that's how I got my training. So it's mostly self-taught, but with sort of self-designed kind of courses and stuff like that. And and then today, like I still do, I still look stuff up online and do tutorials and do little like lessons and things like that. So it's constant. And I'll say too that here in Portland for the last I'll say for roughly the past year, I was involved in a group called the Marston Composition Collective, run by a great guy named Todd Marston, who's a great jazz pianist and composer. And that even recently has been a real education on just songwriting and form and different ways to think about starting projects and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And then getting back to kind of the focus on how you structure songs.
Yeah.
Once you get a track finished writing, so it doesn't have to be like recorded and released per se, but once you've gotten it to where you can start kind of learning it.
Sure.
How long does it usually take you to get comfortable to the point where you feel like you can perform it?
That's a good question because I would say with my last couple projects, as a way to let myself develop them, I sort of put the idea of performance like to the side for a moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was like, because when I used to write stuff, it would always be kind of a preoccupation, like how can I arrange this so it could be something I can perform, which is weird when you're like sometimes the person playing keys and bass, it's like there isn't really a practical way to do that. And so I kind of like sort of set that aside and I kind of just write and record kind of as I'm going and learn the parts, as I'm recording and stuff like that. Now, sort of since I have these records made, I'm now like practicing them to be performed live.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. And figuring out ways like how might I need to adapt, a composition to be able to be like feasibly performable.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
And are you aiming to like perform just as yourself, or are you trying to have moments where you can have people with
a
you?
group, for sure. Yeah, with a band. Like I have some really great collaborators in town, and I hope they will play a show with me. So yeah, it would for sure be a band who I would assemble to perform the stuff.
Okay. I was trying to like imagine how that could even be done on like a one person scale, and I couldn't put my finger on it either. So
yeah, well, I've been thinking a lot too about, everyone's busy. Sometimes it's hard to like, on the record, I have like horns, I got a couple different drummers playing, guitar, etc. And, folks are busy. Yeah. Sometimes. And I realize it might not always be, possible to like get everyone together like at a given point. So now that I'm focusing more, like stepping away from recording for the minute and focusing more on performance, thinking about ways like, you know, maybe I would use like a drum machine for something and like form a different kind of sound for a song based around that. And that's kind of inspired by seeing just like different people do things like that. You know? Like a recent example is like the musician Delicate Steve. You familiar with Delicate?
I'm not. That's a cool name.
I've seen perform here in Portland a couple times, and you know, the music on the records that I had heard, it, like, sounds very full and, you know, lush, and like sounds like there's a lot of pieces and stuff. And then I went to the show and it was really dope. It was like a trio, you know, and the keyboardist was like doubling on bass, and you know, it sounded amazing, you know? And different stuff like that. So, you know, I'm trying to, you know, the core of it is like my voice, and my main instrument is the bass. So, you know, that's kind of what I'm going to hold down, you know?
Yeah.
And then around that, you know, finding ways to get the other pieces in. And I'm really interested in, just like the ways that people record or perform different versions of their own music. Yeah. You know, so.
Well, even like how it gets recreated in a live setting, especially because, like, you know, kind of like how you said though, like he has these big compositions, but then live it was just such a small performance. Like I always wonder like how people go about like simplifying an experience just enough to where like the core elements stay strong. Yeah. There's an artist by the name of Colin Jenkins. Shout out Colin, who's actually fortunate enough to have him on the show once. He can perform as one person or as many people, and sonically I've heard him perform both times, and it's all in both ways, and it's always just this full big put together performance. But like when he sets up, you know, he doesn't just have a laptop and him, like he does bring a myriad of things when it's just him. But even still, like his design still has the computer like integrated into it for both sets. And it's crazy to me like how his production from the computer and like just listening translated so well live. So
I admire that. I really admire that. And so it's an ongoing thing for me. Like I'm not in any rush to sort of start
get out there, like right away.
But primarily because honestly, I mean, I love performing and I love doing shows live and stuff, but I think for the last few years, my biggest kind of preoccupation has been like finding my voice in the music I want to create. And I think the thing that I find that I engage with the most as a fan of music are recordings, you know? So, you know, there are musicians I love who I would love to see live and, you know, love to have come to Portland, but I may never do that. And so, you know, I feel like the best expression of myself right now is in my recorded music, you know, but, the thing that I love about performance and the reason why I want to start getting shows together and stuff is that just for what we were talking about, the things take on a life of their own. And I like to improvise and stuff. So, you know, all that kind of can come out in a show in the way that, you know, in a recording, it's like, it's set at that point, you know, it's not going to change.
Yeah. Once it's out there, that is the only way people can perceive that version.
Exactly.
Well, now let's go ahead and let's talk about some of your music. So I jumped on, you know, ye old Spotify.
Oh yeah.
And currently right now it's your most recent album, Funhouse Horizon, which got right here. Get the glare off of it. Boom, there we go. Which, thank you so much for bringing that in.
My pleasure.
And your EP.
Hot Take
Cold Shoulder
just came out.
And the presentation on both is so good.
Thank you.
So strong. And like I want to check in because usually I just bit where I talk about the most recent thing. But
Sure.
before we do that,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to talk about Funhouse Horizon a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, first of all, how did you get it into 1 billion record stores? Like, can we talk about that real quick?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not on a label.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me and, my lovely wife and, everyone around me, who's supportive, but no, I have no backing, by, or distribution really. So, I was like, well, I got to do it. I have to do it myself. And, turns out Portland has a lot of record stores.
Yeah, there was definitely in your list. I was like, oh, I know that one. I know that one. I don't know that one.
Oh my God.
Like
yeah.
it was surprising to me how big the list was.
Right. Like when I first came up with this goal of, getting the record in the stores and stuff, I was like, all right, maybe there's going to be 5, 6. I'll cover the ground. And the more I started looking, I was like, man, there's this spot, this spot, this spot. And
then as soon as you jump across the river, there's even more like
goodness
records.
Oh yeah. It's amazing. And, so, I just started reaching out or maybe dropping by a shop and talking to the owners and stuff. And, I'm trying to remember the first spot that I went to. Might have been Specs Records.
Okay.
Shout out to Specs. And so I felt like if I did a few, I had to do all, all of them, if I could. And like, I find that, or it seems to me that when it comes to folks who buy records and stuff, it's kind of like, you have a bookstore or something around. It's like you might have your local spot, and that's where you go to. And Portland is not huge, but there's stuff all over the city, and then Beaverton, 503 Records out in Beaverton, up here in Vancouver, so, but it was really just communicating, going in, and then I buy records too. So, it's like wanting to support businesses and wanting, I feel like record stores are a place these days, particularly where, artists are being supported.
Yeah.
It's a place for people to come across music. It's for people to buy, buy stuff and engage.
Yeah. Well, then that is a cool perspective. And thank you for sharing your experience with that.
Sure.
But I have to agree with you. I think record stores are one of the few places that are such a specific type of retail experience. Because you can go to like Target and buy a CD.
Right.
But there's no care about the music. Yeah. It's always like the same 40 artists.
Sure.
But like when you go into a record store, like, Ronald Records recently did this thing where when the new Post Malone album came out, they did a listening party for it. And like that, you're never going to see that just at like Walmart.
Yeah.
Like, what I mean? There's nothing to emphasize it. So, and there are very few specialized retail places that still even exist.
Right.
So I think it's kind of a testament to like even just the importance of music that they are still there.
Right.
And that there are so many of them that can exist in the capacity that do.
Yeah. And, it was just, so it was, it's something, I didn't do it all obviously in a day.
Yeah.
It took probably taken me a few weeks to make it to different spots and, establish some communication and relationships and stuff like that. But, it's something I'm so glad that I've done because, I've been able to meet people, and talk to people. And I think, for me, I'm not the most, how would you say, like, extroverted person, but, the older I've kind of gotten, the more I've been into making music with other people. Before it was like a very solitary thing. The more interested I've become in having collaborators, having a community. And so, and I'm relatively new here in the city. So it's like a way to get embedded.
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Just to be
That makes
present.
sense. Mhm.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
All right. But getting back into talking about your actual music.
Sure.
Like I said, before we'll get into your most recent stuff,
Yeah.
do you still want to talk about the album as an album?
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's still, it came out in February.
yeah, it's still recent enough. But I just,
Yeah.
it's a really powerful body of work.
Thank
I
you.
came up with really cool words, so I really just read verbatim from here. But this just kind of came out, but musically, it's steeped in these moments of just thoughtful composition, as well as the vocals have this ebb and flow to them that just command this tension that's so engaging, and the arrangement is full of like vibrant and really alluring sounds.
Thank you.
And it was just something that as I was listening through it, like I kept having to kind of go back and like re-experience some of the sounds to like really understand the range of what was happening.
Yeah. Wow. That's a huge compliment. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. Yeah.
What made you want to put this out as the first main body of work?
Yeah. It just kind of, as I started so the first song that I finished on the album is a track called Lethal Letters. And that, once I had that song, I sort of took a moment to kind of like reflect on, okay, so where was that sort of leading me? The song itself was inspired by kind of recent, or not recent, but when I was composing the song, what was coming to the fore a lot were, questions of police brutality, like, law enforcement, all these things, and all these sort of innocuous seeming acronyms or whatever sometimes, and like how things seem sort of hidden behind that. Anyway, that was the sort of inspiration, along with some other personal experiences. But once I had that, it felt like, some of the other musical ideas I had on the hard drive, that were like half formed, came more clearly into view in a direction from there. But like, okay, this feels like a body of work that I can put together that to me feels like a cohesive statement. And so from that one, it just started to flow. And then, it's not a full length. It's still technically an EP of 5 songs, but, I think I had 4 tracks, and I was like, you know what? I think it needs one more.
Yeah.
So, the last song on the project, Zadie's Castle, which is the only instrumental tune on the record, I decided to finish that one up and put that out as the 5th song on the record, and that one is sort of like dedicated to my daughter.
Oh, hell yeah!
And so, so that's kind of how it came together. And then, I had to just sort of decide, okay, what order do I put the songs in? Right?
Arrangement is, it's tough. A process.
But then I further realized once I had all the pieces done that there was like a narrative in it. What feels to me like a narrative of all the songs that then helped me see like, hey, this one could come first, this one second. And so that's how that came together. Yeah.
Well, definitely a super solid album.
Thank you. And I guess I'll say too, if this is in the scope, that, I mean, my collaborators on this are just killer.
Yeah.
So shout out to them, Dana Bowie, Matt Mayhall, Chris Shuttleworth, Alex Kallenberger. I hope I'm not forgetting someone because I'm nervous. Anyway, I came to all of them with, these songs that I had, but what they brought to it and what that then inspired, like, would then make me sometimes go back and develop, something a little further and whatever.
Yeah.
So in terms of the construction of the music itself, that was a somewhat fluid process.
Yeah.
Even though I had the stuff.
Yeah, even though it was like, I feel like it probably had to evolve from like what you first started as once you brought the people in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
But now let's go ahead and let's talk about your most recent work, Hot Take Cold Shoulder, which came out just a few weeks ago in August.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like you took a slightly more laid back approach with that. Everything felt a little more relaxed, a little more airy.
Yeah.
And I waited to say this until kind of this part, but the thing that stood out to me in the album as well as on the EP is the bass. And you'd already mentioned you're a bass player. I'm also a bass player as well.
Yeah.
And I like how all of the bass was very tight, it was very punchy, but at the same time, it was never overbearing. It just existed in all the perfect spaces, and it just kind of breathed effortlessly kind of throughout all of your work so far.
Thank you.
And I do this bit where I pick out a personal track that I enjoyed.
Oh, right on.
And it was tough, because even though you don't have a ton of tracks available, content-wise, like, the caliber of music was just so on point that it took me a while to sit with everything. But I eventually went with Clearview Alibi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Right from the first flute note, that song just kind of took me somewhere.
Yeah.
And I never left. As it progressed, I just kind of was, it had this space. And so I never figured out how to word this right in my notes, but I still want to say it here, so it's here.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with a song called "Give Life Back to Music" by Daft Punk.
I'm not.
They are not comparative in any way, shape, or form as far as structure goes. But there's this essence of the track that kind of lives in both of them.
Wow.
So if you go and listen to it after
I will.
I'm curious to see if you see what I'm saying, but it's a stretch. I promise it's a stretch, but for some reason.
Yeah. No. I like stretches.
And that's one of those tracks that just it also, and not talking about them too much, but that track has this genuine element of music in it. And I think that's really what stood out for me on that track in particular.
Yeah, I mean, that one, wow, the flute, Mika Brugman, who's an amazing flautist. She played bass clarinet on that song. That just came out just so beautiful to me, even greater than I knew. I knew the instrumentation that I wanted, and she just came in and just blew it away, I think, and it just perfectly encapsulated what I wanted it to feel like. And Matt Mayhall on drums on that one. Also, just I had a rhythm, in my demo. Yeah, and it was quite different than what the song ultimately ended up being.
I'm so curious to know what the demo sounds like now.
Yeah, all right, I'll find it and I'll shoot it to you on some.
Cool, yeah, please.
Your ears only.
I would appreciate that.
But he's like, "Yo, I got this. Check out this idea for this," and it was a kind of Tony Allen style, kind of almost not quite Afrobeat rhythm, but very just perfect. And then I went back and rewrote the bass part to fit with that. And that one, just feels really special to me. I mean, it speaks of both personal experience, if people listen to the lyrics of the song, I don't want to give too much away, but and then just this weird age we live in where things are we're so surveilled, and that is a part of what the song is about, and I think within that, one of the things I try to pay a lot of attention to when I'm making music is and this may seem obvious, but how is the music really accentuating the lyrics? What is the I forget the term for that. It's prosody or something like that. But and sort of thinking of the music on its own, like, is that taking me on a journey?
Mhm.
Is that doing something? And then how to like achieve that synergy. And for me, the lyrics, the words of the song are super important to me, but it's something about the intersection of those two things.
Yeah.
To me. So I'm really glad you like that track. I really am proud of that one, and I'm really, really glad that it came together. And hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll have a sort of a film video concept for it that I'm trying to bring to fruition. So fingers crossed, that might be forthcoming.
Well, definitely looking forward to that. That'd be a really cool one for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Now let's go ahead and let's turn the focus towards new music you're working on.
Sure.
Do you have anything cooking at the moment?
Oh, I have sort of something always kind of like stewing. But no, right now I'm just really, really focused on, getting deeper into this music that, I've put out that, sort of just happens really fast.
Yeah.
And it's like, it almost feels in some ways like I'm having to learn my songs now.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, two bodies of work in like, 7-ish months. Like that's a pretty fair amount.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, so my other sort of hat is I edit films. I'm a documentary film editor. So like, I do that full time, and that's also a very musically involved thing. Mm-hmm. I'm working on a project right now about a very well-known experimental musician who I can't really say too much about it right now, but that is, I'm not a composer for the films I work on, but I do work with music all the time, at building sort of some inspiration for what eventually becomes the score. And so I'm kind of like focusing on that for a moment, and like I said, just kind of getting deeper into my own tunes.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, hell yeah. Then I guess let's go ahead and let's zoom out a little bit further. Let's take a look at kind of music as a whole.
Yeah.
And you can either answer this as like, when I say new music, meaning music that's coming out today, or just music that's new to you.
Yeah.
But what are some things about newer music that you enjoy and you find inspiration in right now?
There's a lot of great stuff, and wow, where do I even begin? You thinking like some specific?
Yeah, I mean, just you can broad stroke this if you want, or if you have like very specific examples, you can kind of narrow in on this however you feel.
I've really been digging on like there's a few artists. Mary Halverson is a guitarist who is like just a super creative jazz guitarist, for lack of a better word. Paul Bryan is another musician I've been digging. Jeff Parker, all these people, who are like kind of at this intersection of improvised music, sort of beat oriented and experimental, but just really kind of expansive stuff that still like grooves, but like can also take me out of my head. And then there's always kind of just stuff that I just go back to, the flute on the Hot Take Cold Shoulder EP was, I've been listening to a lot of like Bobby Humphrey and Hubert Laws and some of these people who are, I was kind of exposed to from one of my uncles who played flute and clarinet and stuff. And so I always try to sort of, I have stuff that is, older or vintage stuff, but then I'm always trying to sort of like move back and forth between time,
see where it came from and where it's going.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's so cool, and I like to think about a lot, is that for me with music, it's not about necessarily when something came out or when it was made, if it's new to me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so
That's like mainly why I try to pose that beginning part. Like,
yeah.
For everybody, music is new when they hear it for the first time.
Sure.
I said this off camera. I try to listen to a new album every day on my way to work.
Yes.
And I don't look at albums that just came out this year. Like it could have come out in 2024. Sure. It could have come out in 2014, 2004. It's every time we experience music for the first time, it creates kind of a new line in the sand for especially if it's like a genre you're familiar with.
Yes.
And actually, I was speaking with somebody recently who they brought this concept to my attention, where you can hear music that sounds like stuff you're familiar with, but because it's different, it only expands your experience of that sound.
Yes.
And that's something that like now it makes me really enjoy
absolutely
hearing stuff where I'm like, this feels familiar, but it doesn't, because now I can think about the whys.
Right. Yeah, great point. And I'm very inspired by your listen to a new thing so I'm gonna try and adopt that. Another way, I mean, that I've been getting into that is like I've been getting, it's just radio. Like I love being able to just listen to some playlists by a person who put something together. And I kind of go back and forth between, when I'm like driving around or whatever, like let me put something on that I pick for my, music. And then sometimes where I'm just like, you know what, like, let me turn on the radio and see what's happening on there, Yeah. And I end up finding a lot of music like that. And so, I think that's still super valuable. And also as I've been like reaching out to radio and trying to get more playing stuff and listening to different DJs playlists, and, it's just like this music is so vast.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful right now. I mean, there's just so much.
Hell yeah.
At our fingertips.
Yeah. And that actually segues well into this last question, the middle portion.
Yeah.
Now, this is probably the densest question in the interview.
Okay.
But we've talked a lot about, your experience with music, the actions, the reactions.
Sure.
But when it's just you and the music one-on-one, what does music give back to you?
Yeah. Wow. That's a great question. Well, I think the first thing, and this is just coming to me in the moment. So, but I don't know if I've said it out loud, but like music to me, I think first and foremost, it's like a very physical thing, like it's very, literally we have, sound waves going into our ears, moving through our bodies. That's one of the reasons why like I love bass so much, is because it just, you feel it.
Yeah, it literally vibrates your whole body.
Vibration. And so I think first and foremost, one of the things that I get back from it is that that engagement with my body and my mind. And it's a very I think this is backed up scientifically. Like there's it works in so many ways on our brains, and mine in particular. And so it's it's everything from medicine to motivation and whatnot. So there's that. I also find that it gives me a way to have empathy, in the sense that I can feel what another artist or another group of artists has expressed, and that can resonate with me. So there's a feeling of like, I think it's not uncommon for us to feel kind of like, wow, like I really identify with that. I can dig that. It almost feels like we might kind of even know the person in a way, so it gives me that. And then I think as a maker of music who's also like a big fan of music, I like geek out too. It's like, oh, how'd they do this? Or, that sounds interesting, and really getting into like the analytical part of trying to figure out, how it was done.
Yeah.
And that's really gratifying. And, in terms of like, and then, so that's like, experiencing music from sort of a recorded standpoint, and then live, that's a whole other experience.
Yeah.
Is just incredible. And that's kind of like, that's like community, that's like group vibe, that's sort of like, a whole other engagement with other senses and seeing people and, being excited when they pull it off, and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I would say, those are some of the main things. And I like to like move my body and stuff. I like to dance. I like to, even if it's just like grooving and, nodding my head or something. I think that it's like pretty therapeutic, So I hope that answers your question.
That was probably one of the most like full spectrum answers I've ever gotten to that question. So thank you. I love that.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, I think that's a great question for us maybe all to kind of like ask ourselves like from time to time, right? Because like I think sometimes too it's possible to get a little not like burnt out on music, but
we as people put a lot of importance on very specific aspects of music. There's a lot of this like need for it to be something, need for it to like present as something, need for it to like stand for something, mean for something. But I think a lot of times we forget that, and you touched on it really well, music is a core essence. It's a vulnerability. It's an opportunity to express not only yourselves, but to give other people who don't know how to express themselves in that way a way to do so.
Yes, yeah.
And like that's why like angsty music for teenagers is such a big thing. It's it's a place where you can have one-sided understanding by presentation and one-sided understanding by reception, but because those two one sides interact together, it's no longer one-sided. And so it really creates something that I think is so special and so important. And like you said, I think if people ask themselves that question more, it gives people an opportunity to know why they enjoy it.
Sure.
And that's really the most important part is, do you enjoy it? Yes or no? And if you enjoy it, why? Like, because then it stops having to have these thresholds. It stops having to be where it's like, oh, you don't like what I like. Why? It's just, oh, I know why I like this. And that is the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's a great point. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot that is not an original thought to me, but there's just been more discussion, I think, lately about developing our own taste for things and being comfortable with that and kind of maybe having greater understanding of why we like the things we like, because, I think we're in a time where so much of that can easily be decided for us, whether it be algorithms or, gatekeepers, whatever it is. I think having your own, as much as possible. I mean, you can't, I can't always like discern why I like something, it's not always some intellectual thing, but I do feel like I am pretty good at identifying this is a sound that I like, or a vibe at least, or this is like an ethos that I can sense from the musicians and from the music that steers me. Yeah.
Well, even I think as time progresses, eventually you kind of get to a point when you're making music for long enough and when you're experiencing it in that capacity for long enough that you can start to appreciate the effort aside from the presentation. Like there are plenty of songs that I've heard that I don't like musically, but I have a lot of respect for because I understand what went into it. And even sometimes I can come back to them and start to develop a better understanding as time progresses. There's some music that it was not palatable at that moment, whether it be due to situation or due to like presentation, but later on I can come back to in a different headspace with like a little bit of a preconceived notion because I heard it before and then go, oh, like I get something about this now that I didn't get then, even though it was the same song I heard.
Sure.
And so I think music just kind of gets to live in that space forever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine. We're about the same age. We kind of grew up in the same place. I'm in my early 40s. mind saying.
But you definitely don't look it.
Oh, thank you. I'll chalk that up to music. No, but we were like, man, we grew up on like a lot of, I think you could call it like R&B, some of it like verging even on like kind of an easy listening like thing that our parents used to bump, you know what I mean? And like as kids, we were like, oh man, like I'm sitting in the back seat listening, to Anita Baker or something. And now like I throw that on and I'm like, all right, I kind of get it. I get it more. Like it's not like in my rotation necessarily, but I'm like, man, this is fire.
Yeah, I get,
like, stuff like that. And I even tell my mom sometimes, like, wow, like, I'm glad, like, look, I'm listening to this, you used to play this and we used to be like asking you to change the station,
Yeah.
And and so, like, that is a cool feeling how, as you change too.
Yeah. Music changes for you.
Yeah.
But I feel like we'll run on this forever. Let's go ahead and move on to this next portion. And for this, these are all hypothetical questions. Remember these? As the limits, the questions are all made up, so the answers are allowed to be as well. But this first one's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
If you could work with any one person, the only requirement is they have to be alive. Who would you want to work with, and how would you want to work with them?
I'd be really interested to work with someone like Dan the Automator.
Okay. Hell yeah. Oh, that'd be rad. That's such a cool answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to roll with that. Yeah. I mean, so much stuff that he's been involved with, I think has touched me in a lot of ways. And I think it also draws on a lot of other influences. But just thinking like certain records that just had me hooked, like a lot of the Dr. Octagon, Cool Keith record, like, all that kind of Handsome Boy Modeling School, all that kind of stuff would be a big one. And then maybe if I could say a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Would be like Adrian Young.
Okay.
Who does a lot of like the Jazz is Dead and stuff like that, who I just think has amazing taste and talent and just ways of bringing things together in a sound that I really, really like. So,
Damn, put them both in a room, see what happens.
And I think the way that I would like to work with them is to work on, from a producing standpoint, like how to take an idea, take a demo, take a song or something, and find different ways to bring that to fruition, different ways to pick sounds and I think that's something I'm really into. And, I think there's, you can get lost like doing things. And I think, finding different ways to do that, I think would be huge. So it'd be like, here's my thing, like, let's sit together and, like, what are some ways I could like make that better? Or what are some things I'm not thinking about?
What do you see based off this?
Yes. Yeah. I think that would be, that'd be dope.
Oh yeah. And then subsequently, who's a local artist that you're aware of that you haven't gotten to connect with yet, but you would like to?
Yeah, good question. I really been digging, there's a group called the Cosmic Research Trio.
Whoa.
Familiar with them?
That's a cool name though.
Yeah. I want to say they have a record coming out, or maybe it's already out, but I've just been like aware of them just from like following on Instagram or whatever, and kind of sort of just seeing different things around town. I haven't gotten a chance to go to like an actual live show, but it just seems like really experiential and just like really grounded and just out, like out there, like in a great way.
Yeah.
I mean, the name, like, says it, and seems grounded in tradition, but also their own originality. So yeah, that'd be really interesting. And yeah, there's just a lot of great musicians in town who are, I think, doing amazing stuff. And
hell yeah,
yeah,
very much.
That one just comes to mind. There are other, even like, friends of mine, people who've collaborated on my records, I want to do other stuff with that.
Yeah.
They're like in their own right. They're, amazing in doing their own stuff. And, but yeah, there's a lot of talent in town. And folks seem pretty accessible.
Very much. I mean, that's how this whole show exists.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then for this next one, like I said before, sky's the limit, and it's pretty literal in this sense. But if you could perform anywhere in the world, and you wouldn't have to worry about crowd access or building stability or power, guaranteed the best lineup, guaranteed the best show. And it doesn't have to be a venue. It could be anywhere. Mm-hmm. Where would you want to perform?
Okay. That's a great question. I haven't really thought about it, but one thing that comes to mind, which is just like one of my favorite spots that I've ever like been to, was the place I used to go when I was growing up, in San Pedro, California. Shout out. There's I can't remember the name of the park, but there's folks would know it. It's there's a huge, beautiful bell, like the Friendship Bell or something like that. And it's a beautiful park on kind of a hilltop that overlooks the ocean. And it is just pretty magical. I used to go there, as a kid, and just always thought it was like a super beautiful place. And kind of special. It was not far from where I grew up, but when we would go, it felt like kind of a treat to be there. And like doing some kind of show up there would be like really cool. I always remember it being kind of windy and stuff. So like, I don't know like how sound would be, but like on a clear day.
Yeah, a real summer show.
Yeah, summer show, like, that would be a dream.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I always love when people give answers that are like something like like a specific place or time. You know what I mean? Those always feel like the more fun ones.
Oh yeah.
And then to wrap up the hypothetical question, if you could get one more album from anybody, they could be alive, they could be dead, they could have not put out an album in 100 years, they could have put out an album yesterday. Who would you want an album from?
It's funny because I was kind of thinking about this recently. Jimi Hendrix.
Hell yeah. He is definitely one. I mean, I've got a picture of him right on the wall up here. He is one of those artists who, like, I'm always just so curious what his progression of music would have been like how it would, because his sound definitely, like, it kind of changed music in its own right, and like his presentation and things like that. But like, what would it have evolved to? Like, how would it be today? Because like his music, like he'd be a respectfully old guy right now. He would be settling down for sure. But like, what would it have become?
Yeah. And it's like, we never know. And, I sort of, but I say that because I think the last few days, I don't know why, for some reason, I've been humming the song Electric Ladyland to myself. And to me, like, what's cool about Jimmy and like kind of some of those later records, it's like sort of like a Curtis Mayfield sound. It's like almost more soul than rock, like in some ways. And it's just kind of like, it's sort of like feels like something is being worked out that isn't necessarily there. And so it just draws me into thinking like, where might that have gone? And so that's
the song Castles Made of Sand was one of the first like songs that I ever experienced that like really challenged me like it was one of those songs where I was like, there's an emotion here, there's like a presentation here, like because his delivery was always so like nonchalant in a way.
Sure,
But at the same time, like it wasn't. Like it was so rooted in this level of emotion. And that was one of the first songs where like the lyrics really challenged me, the presentation, and like everything just kind of, it even to this day, it's one of the songs where like when I sit down with it, I really almost have to like workshop it in my head. And I always take away something new from it.
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, that
I mean,
that's where my mind goes.
Hell yeah. All right. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up.
Sure.
I know you said you don't have too much cooking as far as like new music goes, but what can we look forward to between like, let's say now and March? Sure.
I think between now and March, I have a couple pieces that, I have started to develop, so I did this, I've done it a couple times now, but there's this challenge that I've done with, like I mentioned, that was in this composition collective. And one of the big sort of milestones we would get to is this thing called the 20 song game. Are you familiar with the 20
I'm not, no.
All right. So the 20 song game is intense. It's like the goal is to come up with, in a 12-hour period, like 20 songs loosely, meaning, they could be ideas, it could be a melody, riff, something. But, the goal is to get as many as you can.
Yeah.
And I've never gotten 20. I've gotten, I think at the most, like 12 or something.
Damn.
But it's a great, like, writing process because it has, for me, it just forced me to, like, go with intuition and go with, like, what just kind of comes out. And then be able to, like, sort of see what kind of sticks, not being judgmental about it. And through that, which I did twice over this past year, I've got like maybe a solid 10 that I'm really interested in taking further.
Okay.
One piece I like sort of finalized and did a little small performance with some of the other members of the collective. And I think that'll be the next thing that I either release as a single or maybe wait and develop it further into a bigger project. But right now, I'm really into this idea of just kind of like when I have a few things that just feel like a collection or, like just like releasing, because I don't really feel super compelled to like, unless I do at some point to like be like, I got to do this album. And it's sort of like in some ways to me kind of like a throwback to like a time before the album was like a big kind of thing. People used to drop singles and 45s and stuff like that. And so I think that is going to be the next thing. I have one cut in particular that's like the most developed piece that I'm wanting to to like put to tape, so to speak.
Gotcha.
As a final piece. And then so I think that would probably, the goal for that would probably be sometime early next year, early 2025.
Yeah, we're almost there.
I know. Yeah. Oh my God. So that'd be something to look forward to. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to get a video piece together for the Clearview Alibi song. And so that's something to stay tuned for. And just continuing, I'm just continuing to try and get the music out there and also find people to work with, find collaborators and like-minded folks. So that's my goal for the next little interval.
Oh yeah. Well, definitely looking forward to all of that.
Thank you.
For this next one, go and look straight at the camera. Tell everybody how they can find you.
You can find me at stevengolliday.bandcamp.com, or you can go to my website, stevengolliday.com, and there you can find info on my film work, music work. Those things really intersect for me, so you can find me there, and of course, Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then any other plugs, any other shout outs, anybody else you'd like to put on while you're on here?
Shout out Dana Bowie, Matt Mayhall, Mika Brugman, Alex Kallenberger, Chris Shuttleworth, and my family. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. All right. And with that being said, we've got one last question to go. But before we do, I'm going to steal the camera for just a second. As always, y'all, please make sure to like, subscribe, push all the buttons, do all the things. I don't know where they are, but you do, and I trust you. And one more shout out to the Brothers Apothecary, Ronald Records, and Portland Water. Thanks for keeping us hydrated. And with that being said, the final question. And this is entirely up to your interpretation. But what is an album you feel is more on the obscure side? It's a deep cut. It's one not a lot of people would know, but it's one you think everybody should know.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a super deep cut. I don't hear it a lot of places, but it used to be, I've heard it sampled on some records I like, but there's a record called Headless Heroes of the Apocalypse, Eugene McDaniels, and I want to say it came out maybe in the early 70s, but it's like a killer record. There's tons of it. I would say, like, in some ways it's a big inspiration. It's like funky as hell, really interesting, haunting kind of arrangements, and like full of kind of a wry social commentary in a lot of ways. Yeah, it's a great record, and I kind of come back to it now and then, and yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a super solid rec. Thank you.
Yeah.
But with that being said, we're going to go and wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Oh, yeah. And this has been another exciting episode of Jimmy's Jambox. I'm Jimmy.
I'm Steven Golliday.
And we're signing off. Later, y'all.
That's a wrap.
This is not a podcast. This is a show.
Keep jamming.